But at what point is it on you? At what point are we in the Trump economy?
Oh, I'd say we're there now. I'm very proud of it.
17 and the nays are 211. The joint resolution is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
From rising costs and unstable trade relationships. Tariffs are meant to protect domestic industries, but in reality, global trade works like a chain reaction. When the United States imposes tariffs, other countries respond with their own measures, and that back and forth often ends up hurting everyday consumers through higher prices and reduced export opportunities. Now, even members of the president's own party are starting to question whether this approach is sustainable. And when internal criticism begins to surface, it usually means real political and economic pressure is building. What makes this moment particularly significant is that resistance is no longer limited to political opponents. Recently, efforts were made in Congress to delay votes related to tariff authority, essentially preventing lawmakers from publicly challenging the policy. However, several members refused to go along with that move, allowing debate and votes to move forward. When party leadership has only a narrow majority, even a handful of lawmakers breaking ranks can shift the entire outcome, and those lawmakers often represent districts where industries like agriculture and manufacturing depend heavily on stable trade relationships. When tariffs lead to lost contracts or increased costs, local businesses suffer, and voters demand answers. Representatives then face a difficult decision: follow party leadership or protect their constituents' economic interests. Increasingly, we are seeing lawmakers choose the latter, which signals a growing divide within the ruling party itself. Another critical issue here involves constitutional authority. Trade policy, including tariffs, traditionally falls under the power of Congress. However, recent administrations have used emergency powers to allow the president to impose tariffs without direct congressional approval. Critics argue that this expands executive power beyond what the Constitution intended. Supporters say emergency tools are necessary to respond quickly to unfair trade practices abroad. The debate has now reached the courts, and the Supreme Court is reviewing whether the current use of tariff authority exceeds presidential powers. The outcome could significantly reshape how trade policy is handled in the future. Meanwhile, uncertainty continues to affect market and business planning, because companies do not know whether current policies will remain in place or be overturned. At the same time, international relationships are also being tested. Countries targeted by tariffs have responded with their own trade deals and alliances, sometimes bypassing the United States altogether. When long-standing trading partners begin looking elsewhere, American exporters can lose access to markets they once relied on. Businesses that operate on thin profit margins feel these disruptions immediately. Small manufacturers and farmers often lack the resources to quickly adapt to changing policies, and some have reported declining revenue and layoffs as a result. Political leaders defending tariffs argue that short-term pain is necessary for a long-term gain, but many voters question how long they are expected to endure that pain without clear results. As election season approaches, economic concerns are becoming central to political campaigns once again. So where does all this leave the country? Politically, we are entering a period where trade policy, executive authority, and economic performance are all colliding at once. Lawmakers must now decide whether they stand fully behind current policies or push for changes that reflect growing concerns among voters and business leaders. The courts may soon weigh in, Congress continues debating its role, and the administration insists its strategy will ultimately strengthen American industry. But for many Americans, the issue is more immediate. They are concerned about prices, job stability, and economic certainty. Over the coming months, we will likely see more votes, more debates, and possibly major legal decisions that shape the future of U.S. trade policy. The real question now is whether policymakers can find a path that balances national interests with economic stability for everyday citizens. And until that happens, this conversation about tariffs, authority, and economic direction is far from over.